The protagonist starts his day feeling uneasy, already dreading the discomfort that crowds bring him. As he observes strangers doing things he cannot comprehend, the annoying ticking of the clock reminds him of the daily grind he must return to. Lying in bed while his alarm blares, he sits up and questions if morning has already arrived. Overwhelmed by the noise, he drops back onto his mattress and shouts in frustration, admitting that he feels like life is terrible and he wants to disappear. Ultimately, he realizes he has no choice but to face the day. Later, at the underground train station, he pushes his way through a dense crowd, offering rushed apologies as he tries to get out. He makes a desperate grab for the train doors just as they close, but misses his chance. Frustrated by his terrible luck and worried about being late, he decides his only option is to sprint to make it on time. Before he can exit the station, a massive skull-like creature blocks his path. Even though the surrounding people are completely oblivious to the creature, he can see it clearly. Knowing the danger, he tries to avoid making eye contact, hoping he will remain safe if he just keeps his head down. Unfortunately, the creature notices his awareness and mutters that it has been seen. As the creature opens its mouth to devour him, he leaps into the air and effortlessly slashes its neck using only his fingers. The creature's head is severed instantly. Landing smoothly, he brushes off his hand and bitterly complains about facing such a nuisance on the day of an important job interview. A nearby girl watches in confusion, wondering why he suddenly appeared to fly. Glancing at the clock, he realizes it is almost 9 in the morning, leaving him with only 7 minutes to spare. His name is Shinoga Inumata. At 18 years old, Shinoga is an unemployed high school dropout. Before his current situation, he was the star player of the basketball team at a prestigious Japanese high school. Furthermore, his late parents were the heads of the Inumata corporate group. Shinoga reflects on the terrifying creature from earlier. Unsure of what they truly are, he simply refers to them as the dead. The dead consume humans, possessing, devouring, and erasing anyone who meets their gaze. While it is nearly impossible to avoid looking at them, Shinoga fortunately possesses the ability to slice them apart with his right hand. He does not understand the origin of this power, only knowing that it manifested when he first began seeing the dead. Despite having this unique ability, he does not feel like he has an unfair advantage in life, noting that the power has never brought him any actual good fortune. Shinoga eventually arrives at the office, where the interviewer points out that he is exactly 1 minute late, but decides to get started anyway. Shinoga puts on a polite smile while thinking it is a waste of time. Once the interview is finished, he heads home completely exhausted and drenched in sweat. He groans in misery and wishes the day would end. He thinks back to the earlier job interview and cringes at how foolish he sounded, especially when he said out loud that it had already started. Watching a passing couple, he envies their companionship and feels even more lonely. He reflects on how his life once had talent, money, education, and friends, but has now lost all its joy. Feeling like unemployed trash, he wonders why life takes so much effort just to survive. As Shinoga walks, the world around him suddenly grows dark. He stops when he notices a mysterious woman standing nearby, staring into the distance. She is dressed completely in black and gives off a strange, unnatural feeling. When she turns and looks at him, fear rushes through his body. Convinced she is dangerous, Shinoga quickly turns and runs, knowing that eye contact could mean death. He suddenly feels sick and stops to vomit. After wiping his mouth, he decides he has to attack first if he wants to survive. He loosens his tie and prepares himself as the woman walks into a dark alley. Shinoga quietly follows and strikes from behind, aiming for her neck. She barely reacts before he attacks her, and she falls to the ground. Breathing heavily, Shinoga runs away, relieved that he survived. When he reaches his apartment, he climbs the stairs, still shaken by her terrifying eyes. Deciding to forget everything that happened, he goes straight to bed and quickly falls asleep. Around midnight, his growling stomach wakes him, and annoyed at the interruption to his rest, he decides to grab a quick bite. Hearing a sizzling noise coming from the kitchen, Shinoga investigates and is absolutely horrified to find the mysterious woman cooking a meal. He panics, completely baffled as to how she is alive and inside his apartment. He attempts to hide, but she calmly approaches him from behind, noting that he is awake. Jumping back in terror, Shinoga fully resigns himself to death. Instead of attacking, she calmly returns to the kitchen, mentioning that breakfast is almost ready and affectionately referring to him as her soulmate. Thoroughly confused, he watches as she serves the food and begins cleaning up, casually explaining that she used whatever ingredients were available in his fridge. Still reeling from the impossible situation, he awkwardly mutters his thanks, and noticing his bewildered expression, she asks, "What is wrong?" Unable to hold it in, he finally demands to know how she managed to survive. Smiling, the mysterious woman explains that her body naturally regenerates, allowing her to come back to life even after being killed. He listens in disbelief, thinking that such an ability is completely unfair and nonsensical. She goes on to admit that she does not know how he managed to do it, but because he successfully severed her head and her heart, it took her over half a day just to regenerate the worst of the damage. The process consumed nearly all of her power, meaning it will take at least a month for her to return to full strength. When Shinoga cautiously apologizes, she dismisses it, calling him her soulmate and urging him to be proud of his immense power. Shocked, he shakes his head, mentally scolding himself for taking her words to heart and trying to snap back to reality. She then prompts him to eat the meal she prepared before it gets cold, and startled, he awkwardly complies. As Shinoga begins to eat, he wonders why she would bother cooking for him instead of seeking immediate revenge. To his surprise, the food is incredibly delicious, and he openly praises the taste. She smiles, mentioning it was just thrown together from leftovers, but promises to cook a larger meal next time. Sweating heavily, he hesitantly asks what she meant by calling him her soulmate. She bluntly declares that since he killed her, she has decided to make him her life partner. The revelation stuns Shinoga, and when he asks how she reached such a bizarre conclusion, she wonders if she really needs to spell it out. Growing nervous, he questions if she is actually proposing marriage, deeply confused as to why she is not offended by her own murder. When he nervously pushes for a reason, she casually reveals that she can hear his inner thoughts. Flustered, he apologizes, but she reassures him and offers a proper explanation. She explains that as the only human, and indeed the only being, to ever kill her, he completely piqued her curiosity. She fell in love with his strength and now wishes to keep him for herself as her husband. With that simple declaration, she calmly goes back to cleaning. Shinoga realizes she is vastly overestimating his abilities, unaware that he is actually quite weak. However, he finds himself momentarily distracted by her incredible beauty, imagining a normal life of dating and eating together. He quickly snaps out of the delusion, reminding himself that she is a terrifying being with an unknown past. Out of curiosity, he asks what his role as a partner would actually mean. He nervously explains that while he is flattered, she is a special being, and he doubts a weak human like him could truly satisfy her as a husband. Suddenly, Shinoga is struck by a horrifying hallucination of his own head being sliced in half. Terrified, he frantically touches his face to ensure he is still intact. Her demeanor instantly shifts to something commanding and sinister as she orders him to kneel. Completely overwhelmed by panic at the sight of her, he immediately drops to his knees, panting heavily. She firmly asserts that even couples must show mutual respect, strictly warning him never to compare her to the cheap tools he considers threats. She commands him to lower his gaze, and he complies, mentally noting that he feels as though he has died multiple times in mere seconds from sheer terror. Realizing he truly knows nothing about her world, she decides to explain her origins carefully. She clarifies that the dead are actually divine extermination devices created by the Highlands. Because she is a far superior being, she finds the comparison highly insulting. Shinoga is completely bewildered by the concept of the Highlands and extermination devices meant for humans. Postponing further details about the Highlands, she points out that she has perfectly replicated a human form. Moving on to her main point, she reveals that as her life partner, his only task will be to become the savior of mankind, the Messiah for humanity, which she coldly refers to as God's defective product. She elaborates that at the dawn of time, the world was a beautiful garden. However, God grew bored and created conscious life in his own image. Knowing humans would eventually destroy each other, God was nonetheless surprised by their immense resilience. To correct this, the beings of the Highlands were created to erase any existence that strayed from the original plan. He realizes she is one of these divine beings, which she proudly confirms. She lists the 6 apostles currently threatening humanity, including Bridget the Unyielding, the Third Lady of Hell Seals, the Great Saint Azaka, Noah of Blissful Climate, Professor Netless, and the self-destructive Animo. She declares that these enemies continue to slaughter humans, but together, she and Shinoga will wipe them out. Realizing she fully expects him to help save the world, his immediate internal response is a resounding refusal. Suddenly, the floor behind him begins to shatter, and something massive emerges from the wreckage. Completely caught off guard, Shinoga frantically demands to know what is happening. She casually identifies the intruder as a puppet, just as a massive creature known as the divine mecha warrior, Bella Laika, bursts from the debris. She quickly grabs him, moving them out of harm's way, while he loudly laments the destruction of his apartment. She clarifies that the puppet is essentially a high-class version of the dead he already knows, casually scolding the machine for interrupting their conversation. Panicking, Shinoga begs her to defeat it, but she completely refuses. The puppet raises a blatantly offensive gesture before deploying a technique called the Wretched Care Plasma Arc. Its finger massively enlarges as it strikes at her, blocking the enormous finger with ease. She demands to know if Shinoga will fight or surrender, urging him to rejoice at the honor of saving the world alongside a unique being like her. Overwhelmed and terrified, Shinoga shouts that he has no idea what she is talking about. He confesses that despite his unique abilities and hard work, his life has been nothing but miserable, and he is simply not cut out to be humanity's hero. Admitting that the only positive thing in this entire chaotic situation is her beauty, he self-deprecatingly declares that a piece of trash like him should just die there to avoid causing anyone more trouble. He drops to his knees, apologizing and insisting he is not the savior she thinks he is. Ignoring his despair entirely, she effortlessly crushes the puppet's giant finger with her bare hand and calmly announces that she is opening the path. Suddenly, her right foot strikes out from below, completely shattering the puppet's hand. Turning her attention back to Shinoga, she leans in closely and orders him to open his eyes. She sharply scolds him for placing his own petty values above the fate of the world and for constantly devaluing his own life, asserting that a mere mortal does not have the right to make such pathetic judgments. Declaring herself as his new god, she demands his absolute obedience and love. She challenges him, stating that if he truly despises the world as much as he claims, he should help her turn it upside down. Meanwhile, the puppet looms directly above him, preparing to strike. Although she remains oblivious to the impending attack, Shinoga spots the danger instantly. Leaping into the air, he effortlessly severs the puppet's remaining hand and gracefully lands on the opposite side. With his resolve finally ignited, he confidently declares that he is ready to fight. Laughing warmly at his delayed but welcome courage, the mysterious woman formally reintroduces herself. She proclaims her grand titles as the ruler of the created and the uncreated, one of the most powerful opposers of God, and the sovereign of the starlit night. Revealing her true name as Yairgnacht Finsternis, she proudly announces that from this day forward, she is his wife. She vows to be the only one who will ever open the door to his heart, demanding that Shinoga swear an oath to never die and leave her behind. In a moment of awkward hesitation, he nervously asks if his unemployed status is going to be an issue. Visibly annoyed, she threatens to end him herself if he ever says something so stupid again. Quickly dropping the joke, Shinoga solemnly swears the vow. Standing in the ruins of his completely destroyed home, Shinoga sadly thinks about all his failures and admits that everything that happened is his own fault. He accepts that his current miserable situation is the result of his choices. Meanwhile, Yairgnacht calmly makes tea, and he asks about the giant puppet that attacked them. She explains briefly that her earlier attack weakened it badly, so the enemies sent the puppet to check things out. Shinoga realizes that the destruction around him is also connected to his actions. He starts panicking, worrying about how he will ever repay his landlord, and fears he might even lose his limbs if he can't pay. Before he spirals further, Yairgnacht interrupts him and says she is tired from being torn apart and fighting his battles. She casually asks him for a shoulder massage. Surprised but eager to help her, Shinoga does his best. Yairgnacht is satisfied and thanks him, which makes him feel relieved that he didn't mess anything up. Then she says it's her turn to help. She reminds him that even though they are married, he is still tied to his human life. She places her hand on the ground and releases a small part of her dark power. Black energy shakes everything, and she jokingly says she is leaving a very generous wedding gift for the landlord. Shinoga is shocked when his ruined apartment suddenly transforms into a huge, luxurious 4-story building. His landlord, Natsuhara, suddenly becomes extremely rich overnight. After that, Yairgnacht flies through the sky carrying Shinoga, saying she will explain everything later. Shinoga is terrified, amazed they are crossing such huge distances so quickly, and confused by her power. They land briefly, then immediately jump again into the air. Shinoga screams in fear, saying the jumping will kill him, and reminding her he is very fragile. She smiles and apologizes, saying she forgot how weak humans are. Shinoga quickly blames himself instead, saying she doesn't need to apologize. To keep him safe, Yairgnacht adjusts her grip and tells him to hold on to her neck. This makes him awkward and nervous, but he does it anyway. She reasons that flying is the fastest way to travel. Shinoga thinks nothing about this situation feels simple at all. Then suddenly she snaps her fingers, and they start falling from the sky. While falling, she shows a huge gate appearing in front of them. She explains it is connected to her power used to rebuild the apartment. Behind the gate is her personal world, where whatever she believes exists becomes real, and anything she considers unimportant disappears. She reassures him that he is safe. They pass through the gate and land in another place, then continue moving again. Soon they arrive at a massive, beautiful estate. Inside, everything is extremely luxurious and styled like a grand French mansion. Yargnacht proudly says the whole place belongs to her and tells Shinoga to relax and feel at home. She tells him to wash his hands. When Shinoga enters the bathroom, he is shocked by how fancy everything is, much more modern and beautiful than his old home. Yargnacht appears behind him and asks what he thinks. He nervously compliments the bathroom, not realizing it is actually the room she worked hardest on. She happily says it's fine and tells him he can use anything in the house because the entire estate now belongs to both of them. The reality of being her soulmate and husband finally hits Shinoga when he nervously asks if he is actually supposed to live there. Yargnacht confirms it as an obvious fact. Panic sets in and he bluntly refuses, stating it is a bad idea. Yargnacht's aura instantly darkens as she demands an explanation. Scrambling to clarify, he confesses that the sudden leap from never having a girlfriend to having a wife, coupled with the burden of fighting for the planet, is completely overwhelming. Shinoga admits it feels wrong to live with her while his mind is in such turmoil. Yargnacht's intimidating aura fades into an understanding smile. Calling him over, she wraps him in a gentle hug, asking if she is embracing him correctly. As he awkwardly agrees, Yargnacht softly takes the blame for not explaining things properly from the start. Still holding him, she confesses that saving humanity is not her true priority. Yargnacht admits she has never had a boyfriend, explaining that she once chased an impossibly high ideal, sacrificing friendships, family, and warmth in the process. When he asks why she chose him, she silently recalls a past vision. She explains that her perspective recently shifted, sparking a desire to understand mortal connections so she could embrace human desires when the time finally came. Ultimately, Yargnacht demands that he obey her, stay close, and learn to love her. Though he finds her logic confusing, she orders him not to overthink it. Shinoga nervously agrees, completely relieved when she casually mentions she would have severely punished him if he had continued to refuse. Despite her extreme words, Shinoga smiles and admits he is slowly starting to understand Yargnacht, which brings him genuine happiness. Blushing at his earnestness, Yargnacht laughs, teasing that he is much cuter than he looks, even if his lack of intelligence ruins the charm. Annoyed by the backhanded compliment, he nonetheless accepts Yargnacht's final piece of advice, to stop worrying about his limitations and simply act. Meanwhile, in the highlands, a vibrant girl sings and dances to a human song until she glibly forgets the lyrics. This is the emissary of the blissful climate, Noah. Noah's performance is abruptly interrupted by the emissary of the unbreakable, Brigitte, who wears a strict sergeant's uniform. Brigitte disgustedly orders Noah to stop singing filthy mortal tunes. Unbothered, Noah mocks Brigette's rigid attitude and pathetic wings, deliberately provoking her until a fierce brawl breaks out between them. Attempting to stop the violence, a girl dressed in a nurse's outfit steps in, pleading for peace. This is the great saint, Azaka. Instead of stopping, Noah and Brigitte instantly turn their aggression on Azaka, beating her for poorly interrupting their fight. As Azaka tearfully apologizes and dramatically begs God for forgiveness, another girl arrives to address the group. Mid-sentence, Noah casually knocks the newcomer's head clean off her shoulders. Unfazed, the headless girl calmly walks over, retrieves her own severed head, and simply notes that half of their group has finally assembled. Reattaching her severed head, the emissary of self-destruction, Animo Lip, officially calls the 1396th Division meeting to order. While Azaka happily greets Animo, Brigitte furiously scolds Animo for calling the assembly and then showing up last. Casually sipping her coffee, Animo dismisses the complaints. Noah briefly interrupts to mock Animo's hygiene, earning a sharp insult in return before Animo finally sits at her laptop to begin. Getting straight to the point, Animo announces that Yargnacht has been killed. The revelation deeply shocks the group, though Noah remains unfazed. Azaka mourns the supposed divine punishment of a pure soul, while Brigitte furiously protests that someone else managed to kill the traitor before she could. Noah questions the logic, pointing out that only God himself should possess the power to kill Yargnacht. Animo confirms the death is real, adding that Yargnacht was forced to expend massive amounts of power to regenerate. Animo then relays a message from their creator, granting them permission to fight the weakened traitor on the condition that it remains a one-on-one battle. To determine who gets the privilege of striking first, Animo tosses a deck of cards to the group. They each draw. Brigitte pulls a 1, Animo draws a 6, Azaka excitedly reveals a 7, and Noah quietly pulls a 13. Securing the highest number, Noah excitedly claims the victory and departs, leaving a disappointed Azaka and a highly frustrated Brigitte behind. Before dispersing, Brigitte asks Animo if Noah can actually handle such an overpowered opponent. After a moment of thought, Animo admits that if Noah takes the fight seriously, she might actually stand a chance. Meanwhile, Noah descends toward the mortal realm, absolutely thrilled by the prospect of fighting a weakened, near-godlike entity. Tearing open a portal, Noah violently crashes into a holy sanctuary within a human village. The sheer force of her landing shatters the earth, creating a massive crater as Noah loudly challenges Yerg to come out and play. Shinoga wakes up to the sound of Yergnacht calling him honey for the 37th time. She cheerfully instructs Shinoga to get dressed for breakfast in the living room. Confused but relieved, he actually managed to sleep after yesterday's chaos. He begins getting ready. Spotting the clock at 8:59, Shinoga panics about his 9 o'clock job interview, sprinting so frantically that he trips and falls before finally remembering he already canceled it. Accepting that he must resume job hunting soon, Shinoga is startled when Yergnacht suddenly opens the door. Noticing his frantic state, Yergnacht asks what is wrong. He awkwardly admits he thought Yergnacht would be angry if he did not look presentable. Dismissing his worry completely, Yergnacht casually announces they are going out to get to know each other better. Later, they arrive at an abandoned, graffiti-covered construction site. As Yergnacht sets up a picnic, Shinoga marvels at the street art, finding the location highly unusual for a date. Yergnacht's aura suddenly shifts as she challenges him to a fight, offering a reward if Shinoga wins so she can properly gauge his abilities. Knowing he stands no chance, he still resolves to do his best. Feigning an issue with his shoelaces, he launches a surprise attack, but Yergnacht effortlessly blocks it. Without even needing her powers, she counters with a rapid flurry of punches, easily tossing him to the ground. Bleeding from the nose but relatively unhurt due to her careful control, he listens as Yergnacht calls him useless. Yergnacht questions how someone who once killed her can now fight with such an empty expression, diagnosing his problem as a lack of true seriousness. To force him to take things seriously, Yergnacht's eyes turn cold and she threatens to kill Shinoga if he does not fight with real intent. Shinoga, nervous and unsure, throws a weak punch. She easily knocks him far away and warns him that he will die quickly if he doesn't learn to choose his timing and strike properly. Shinoga immediately apologizes and admits that he cannot mentally bring himself to try and eliminate her. He explains that it feels impossible for him to treat her as an enemy. Hearing this, she softens and smiles. She gently tells him not to use the word wife so casually. She then admits that they rushed into both their relationship and their situation as fighters. She confesses that calling him her husband was more of a sudden impulse than a planned decision. Becoming serious, she takes out her phone and shows him a photo of a mountain in Gifu split violently in half. She explains that this is what caused the tremors he felt earlier. She reveals that her enemies have finally found her location. At that exact moment, a massive explosion suddenly erupts behind them. Turning around, Shinoga is completely confused as a train suddenly crashes upward through the floor. Noah appears and immediately announces her arrival, launching a technique called Juggernaut Notes. Yergnacht easily dodges the barrage while keeping Shinoga protected. Standing on top of the ruined train, Noah remarks that a century has passed and mockingly offers Yergnacht and Shinoga a piece of chewed gum. Yergnacht refuses and calmly explains to Shinoga that Noah is an agent of God who manipulates vectors and natural disasters. Sensing her overwhelming aura, Shinoga immediately realizes Noah is a top-class threat. Yergnacht warns him that the real battle has begun and states bluntly that if he does not fight properly, she will die. Noah jumps down from the train and inspects Yergnacht closely. She then bursts into laughter, mocking how weak and pathetic the once ruthless Yergnacht has become. Noticing Shinoga nearby, Noah ridicules Yergnacht's attempt to save humanity. She boasts that she recently triggered an earthquake just to watch humans panic or mindlessly record it, calling them fools who love death. Furious at Yergnacht's former reputation, Noah launches a sky-shattering reckless kick, vowing to crush her. Yergnacht blocks it easily and warns that Noah's habit of underestimating opponents will be her downfall. In an instant, Noah realizes her leg has been severed. She looks down in shock and sees Shinoga awkwardly holding it. He politely apologizes and offers to return it. Humiliated and enraged, Noah performs a one-legged version of her kick. Yergnacht quickly secures Shinoga and dodges the attack. Confused that a human could injure her, Noah demands to know who he is. Yergnacht casually spells it out as surprise and reveals that Shinoga is the man who killed her before and is now her partner. Noah freezes in shock. Yergnacht then declares that saving humanity is no longer their goal. Instead, she and Shinoga plan to defeat all apostles and force everyone to become Shinoga's servants. Shinoga is stunned and immediately tries to stop the situation from escalating. Noah, however, quickly recovers and finds the situation entertaining. She praises Yergnacht for still retaining her arrogance despite being weakened. Noah then deduces Shinoga's weakness. He has no power unless he makes direct physical contact. Mocking Yergnacht's condition, she declares that the final festival has arrived and vows to turn them to dust. Clapping her hands together, Noah condemns them and dares them to make her a servant. She summons a blazing hammer and, with a violent stomp of her leg, creates a massive fiery orb that rapidly expands, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Terrified but accepting his apparent demise, Shinoga tries to move to protect Jaergnacht, remembering her warning that his failure would mean her death. Instead, Jaergnacht gently pulls him into a warm embrace, praises his effort, and takes control of the battle herself. She extends her hand and calmly commands the massive engulfing orb to turn off, causing Noah's attack to vanish instantly. Then she switches the command to turn on, sending Noah crashing downward. Jaergnacht explains coldly that even in her weakened state, the hierarchy of their abilities has not changed. To return Noah's earlier train attack, she summons traffic lights around the battlefield. Noah panics, realizing Jaergnacht has created a servant with vector immunity, and shouts that it is cheating. A colossal entity known as the Runaway Night Train, 666, erupts from the ground and strikes Noah before ascending into another dimension. As Noah falls from the sky, Shinoga quickly catches her. Jaergnacht casually declares victory, while Shinoga bluntly points out that she could have used this strategy from the start. They bring the unconscious Noah back to the luxurious estate. Shinoga admits he could not leave her in the rubble. Jaergnacht agrees and repeats her plan to make Noah Shinoga's servant. Noah suddenly wakes up, complains about the noise, and mocks Shinoga with a strange expression before dismissing him as boring. Jaergnacht formally declares Noah as Shinoga's servant, but Noah immediately rejects it, saying her earlier comments were only battlefield taunts, not a contract. Jaergnacht ignores the distinction and threatens to enforce it by force. Shinoga steps in, but instead of arguing about servitude, he demands that Noah apologize to Jaergnacht. He explains that he cannot tolerate people mocking others who are genuinely trying their best. He admits her words felt personally hurtful and says that looking down on others is wrong. Stunned, Noah calls him strange, but admits she has lived over a century and has never met anyone so sincere. Laughing, she calls him adorable and tells Jaergnacht that the human world might not be so hopeless after all. Jaergnacht simply agrees that Shinoga is exactly as she said. Noah then suddenly steps forward, pinches Shinoga's chin, and kisses him. She declares that this act breaks her divine contract and officially makes her Shinoga's servant. Confused, Shinoga asks for clarification. Jaergnacht explains that physical contact with a mortal breaks the divine mark and expels a being from the highlands. They lose some power, but gain complete freedom from God's control. Shinoga asks Noah if she is truly okay with such a sacrifice. Noah calls him an idiot and says she does not care. She describes the world as corrupt and meaningless, where purity dies early and adults survive through lies. She adds that Shinoga's innocence interests her, and as the embodiment of chaotic pleasure, she has spent her life laughing at both joy and suffering. Shinoga, stunned, immediately panics about the kiss and looks to Jaergnacht for a reaction. She calmly tells him not to worry. Realizing he does not fully understand either of them, Shinoga concludes that Jaergnacht and Noah simply operate differently from normal people. Both value their desires and freedom above all rules of the world. Shrugging off the absurdity of everything, Shinoga decides that if they are fine with it, he is too. Noah happily agrees. Later that night, after everyone has bathed, Noah casually brings up their future plans. Fully accepting her role as Shinoga's servant, she enthusiastically offers to dig up gold, assassinate Shinoga's enemies, or even become his girlfriend. Jaergnacht immediately punches Noah, firmly defending her exclusive role as Shinoga's wife. When Noah points out that Shinoga and Jaergnacht barely act like a married couple, Jaergnacht explains that they are simply taking things slowly at Shinoga's pace. She then turns back to Shinoga and earnestly confesses her love. Jaergnacht declares her ultimate wish for Shinoga, the man who killed her, to become the king of the world so they can both fulfill their desires. Just as she asks if he loves her in return, the building violently shakes. Shinoga looks out the window and sees the estate surrounded by Tokyo police cars. Noah quickly deduces that the authorities tracked them down after the train incident. Instead of dealing with them, she cheerfully suggests going for a drive. Outside, confused officers bang on the bulletproof doors, unable to understand the invisible monsters and supernatural destruction from earlier. Suddenly, the estate window shatters as a luxurious car, the Zillard Detroit K1999, crashes through the glass. With Noah at the wheel, the vehicle launches onto the road at extreme speed, almost as if it is flying. Clinging on for his life, Shinoga asks where she learned to drive like this. Calmly smoking a cigar, Noah reveals she was once a mafia boss in a western country, but accidentally destroyed the entire nation due to her overwhelming power. Stunned by the confession, Shinoga asks what Noah and Yergnacht truly are. Yergnacht explains that they are walking monsters who were once human, beings who witnessed the end of humanity and came to despise it. Noah casually adds that she is one of the newest of their kind, while referring to Yergnacht as the oldest, even calling her their mother, though Yergnacht quickly shuts down the remark. Reflecting on their true nature, Shinoga responds to Yergnacht's earlier confession. He tearfully admits that since meeting them, he feels guilty for being so happy. He explains that although he grew up around kind and fair people, he grew to resent them, lacking the courage to live freely and seeing himself as ungrateful. Noah finds it strange that Shinoga hates life despite his seemingly good fortune. Shinoga compares himself to a sardine, constantly hunted from birth to death, yet still struggling and moving forward until the end. Crying in the back seat, he says that despite being smarter than a sardine, he feels far more miserable, especially when he sees others living happily. He then asks if someone like him is truly allowed to share a wish with Yergnacht. Yergnacht gently reassures him, praising him for reaching such a deep realization at his age. She reveals that she once felt the same way at the end of her own journey, which led her to accept herself and choose him. Taking Shinoga's hand, Yergnacht declares that he will now be their driver. Noah switches to the back seat as Shinoga takes the wheel and immediately feels a surge of energy. He presses the gas, driving so fast that even Noah enjoys the ride. When Yergnacht praises him, Shinoga modestly says he has only practiced a little. Suddenly, a massive police blockade appears ahead. As Shinoga panics, Noah declares there is only one option. She leaps out of the car and sprints alongside it, cheering Shinoga on as the speedometer hits 230. Standing on her seat, Yergnacht announces they are performing the encore of The Lost Dog, The Reckless Rock. Instantly, a colossal leg erupts from the asphalt beneath them, kicking the speeding car high into the sky. As Noah, Shinoga, and Yergnacht soar through the air, Shinoga and Yergnacht hold hands tightly. Yergnacht tells him that this absolute freedom is the true meaning of life, and Shinoga agrees. Smiling from the back, Noah urges Shinoga to confess his love to Yergnacht. Shinoga becomes completely flustered as they continue flying through the night. After the police handle the aftermath of the chaotic escape, Shinoga, Yergnacht, and Noah finally go to sleep. Lying in bed, Shinoga tosses and turns, unable to rest after the night's insane events. He looks over at the sleeping Yergnacht and quietly thanks her for staying by his side. Just as he is about to finally confess his love, Noah suddenly interrupts from behind, complaining that their romantic tension is grossing her out. Startling both Shinoga and Yergnacht awake, Noah angrily reminds them that since they forced her to sleep in the same room due to a lack of beds, they should not pretend she does not exist. The next morning at a restaurant, Noah remains in a terribly annoyed mood, complaining that their romance ruined her day. When Yergnacht asks what is truly bothering her, Noah admits she is disgusted to see the once cold, calculating, and terrifying Yergnacht fawning over a hesitant human. In response, Yergnacht strikes Noah, sending her flying, but Noah stubbornly refuses to back down. Suddenly, Yergnacht pieces everything together. She realizes Noah actually fell in love with her a century ago. Yergnacht points out that during their recent battle, Noah held back, used weak attacks, and ultimately joined their side far too easily. Embarrassed and flustered, Noah screams at Yergnacht to shut up as the two women begin violently throwing objects at each other. Watching everything unfold, Shinoga realizes that even divine beings are driven by very human emotions. He politely asks everyone to calm down. After things settle and the three of them sit together peacefully, Noah questions why Yergnacht is so focused on Shinoga. Yergnacht answers honestly. She says that after meeting someone truly kind, she decided to stop hiding her real desires. She explains that she has always been the one in control, guiding others and enforcing order, but deep down, she wants the opposite. She wants someone stronger than her to guide and control her instead. Shocked, Noah bluntly asks if that just means Yerg is a hidden masochist. Without any shame, Yergnacht admits it and asks if there is anything wrong with that. Noah and Shinoga both fall silent in surprise. Meanwhile, Shinoga nervously realizes that he will have to work very hard to live up to Yergnacht's expectations. Meanwhile, in the Highlands, Animo explains the situation to Brigitte, who becomes furious upon learning that Noah gave up her divine status. She argues that Noah should have died with honor instead of surrendering. Animo calmly points out that Noah's easygoing personality and her similarities to Yergnacht made this outcome predictable. Brigitte believes she failed as a mentor because she could not influence Noah. However, Animo dismisses this idea, noting that the two never truly understood each other in the first place. Gripping her spear tightly, Brigitte declares that she will carry out her duty. Still enraged, she leaves for the human world, while Animo quietly mocks her foolishness. Waking up to find Shinoga's side of the bed empty, Yargnacht checks the bathroom before discovering him in the kitchen. He greets her, apologizing that he is not a professional chef, but happily serves up his personal favorite breakfast of bacon and eggs. Amazed by his domestic efforts, she gladly digs in and praises his cooking. While drinking tea, they watch a breaking news broadcast about a mysterious giant hole that suddenly opened in a Siberian glacier. Yargnacht confirms that their next opponent has made quite an explosive entrance. Noah jumps onto the couch, identifying the culprit as Brigitte. They realize Brigitte was ordered to target Japan, but wound up in Siberia simply because Brigitte is a complete idiot. Yargnacht explains that Brigitte's core ability is breaking through. She charges straight ahead at blinding speeds, ignoring all obstacles, and is impossible to reason with. Noah adds that Brigitte's overwhelming power is sometimes completely unstoppable, warning Shinoga that he could easily die if they face her. Unfazed, Shinoga volunteers to fight, and both Yargnacht and Noah are thoroughly amazed by his sudden courage. He explains that to truly grasp the seriousness Yargnacht lectured him about, he needs to actively dive into life-or-death situations so he can eventually be of use to them. Noah is highly impressed by his backbone, agreeing that life is only worth living if one dances with death. Yargnacht, however, twists his words, playfully asking if throwing himself into it means he is ready to give all his love to her. Noah rolls her eyes at Yargnacht's twisted mind, and Shinoga promises to give Yargnacht an answer soon before Yargnacht excuses herself to the restroom. Taking advantage of the moment, Noah seriously offers to help Shinoga train. When he jokingly asks if she is going to train him to say, "I love you," she punches him. Drawing on her brutal past, Noah assures him she is the perfect person to teach him how to survive real danger. Touched, he sincerely thanks her, calling Noah a genuinely cool person. Flustered, she hits him again, scolding him for blurting out such weighty compliments so casually, though she admits it does not feel bad. As a bonus, she promises that if he manages to surprise her during their upcoming training, she will reward him with a secret. As Noah playfully flirts with him, Yargnacht suddenly interrupts the moment, sternly warning Noah not to cross the line even as a joke. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Brigitte violently trudges through the freezing wastelands of Antarctica, moving with such intense force that she terrifies the local bears. Confidently claiming her intuition is telling her the target is close, Brigitte remains completely unaware that she is marching in the exact opposite direction of Japan. Relocating to a heavily damaged training area filled with shattered windows, Noah impatiently suggests they begin training immediately, so Shinoga does not become dead weight. Still suspended in the air by Yargnacht, Shinoga is finally set down as Yargnacht sternly reminds him that their previous conversation is not over. Ignoring her, Noah drags Shinoga to a nearby sofa. Without warning, she uses her fiery vector manipulation to launch the entire sofa straight out the window. Laughing wildly as Shinoga is sent flying, she announces the start of his extreme training and jumps out after him. Left alone in the shattered room, Yargnacht briefly considers following them but decides against it, feeling it would seem too desperate. Plummeting from the sky, the sofa breaks apart as shocked onlookers watch below. Noah lands safely with Shinoga, but the impact leaves him nauseous, and he immediately vomits. She cheerfully congratulates him on surviving his first near-fatal experience. Still shaken, he admits he is terrified of what she plans next. Without wasting time, Noah takes him straight to the headquarters of the Japanese mafia, declaring she will charge in. Realizing another dangerous situation is unavoidable, Shinoga braces himself but agrees to go along with it. Pleased by his response, Noah praises him enthusiastically, calling him the strongest man until he awkwardly asks her to stop. With explosive force, Noah kicks the headquarters doors wide open and boldly challenges everyone inside. Though completely confused, Shinoga tries to match her energy. A mafia boss in a black coat orders his armed men to eliminate them. Before anyone can fire, Noah delivers a single powerful kick that launches the men upward, embedding their heads into the ceiling. While Noah enjoys defeating the weaker opponents, Shinoga stands there, unable to process what is happening. Pointing ahead, Noah tells him their target is further inside. In one of the rooms, a woman sits in a chair and demands to know their business. She is Karura Akayo, the 13th generation boss of the Karura Gumi. Calling her foolish, Noah announces it is Shinoga's turn and orders him to make Karura his subordinate. Without warning, she throws Shinoga directly toward her. Landing on his knees, Shinoga panics internally. Even though he expected something extreme, this situation feels far beyond his control. After taking a breath, Karura assumes Shinoga defeated her guards. Frustrated by what she sees as delusion, Karura fires a bullet into Shinoga's shoulder. Watching from the side, Noah mutters an insult. Karura stands and warns him that challenging the mafia guarantees death. Clutching his wound, Shinoga surprisingly stands up with a smile. He politely excuses himself and tries to explain that he has no hostile intent, noting that Noah acted on impulse. Ignoring him, Karura fires again, grazing his other shoulder, but nothing seems to affect him. Remaining calm, Shinoga politely asks her to stop shooting while he is speaking. Watching this strange exchange, Noah is amused by his lack of fear. Shinoga admits that although the bullets hurt, the situation does not frighten him because he deals with far more terrifying people every day, clearly referring to Jahrnacht. Confused by his resilience, Karura raises her gun again. Before she can fire, Shinoga lunges forward, pushes her back, and calmly asks if they can continue their conversation. Suddenly realizing his hand is still on Karura's shoulder, Shinoga panics and quickly apologizes for the inappropriate contact. From behind, Noah warns him not to lower his guard against the mafia. Accepting there is no turning back, Shinoga forces himself to act intimidating, awkwardly mocking Karura's confidence. To his shock, it works. Karura stares at him in fear before immediately dropping to her knees. She apologizes and explains her situation. After inheriting the clan from her grandfather, she has struggled to lead as the organization declines. Exhausted from maintaining a false image of strength, she assumes Shinoga must be a legendary figure based on his presence. At 31, Karura formally surrenders and begs to entrust herself, her team, and her entire clan to him. Overwhelmed, Shinoga tries to refuse, but Noah pushes him aside. Floating in the air, Noah introduces herself as Shinoga's first servant and accepts Karura's surrender on his behalf, warning her that the mafia cannot break such a vow. When Karura agrees, Noah happily tells Shinoga he can now do whatever he wants with his new subordinate, much to his distress. Later at the estate, Jahrnacht demands an explanation for why Shinoga left for training and returned with another woman. As Karura sits politely in the living room, Shinoga nervously tries to explain what happened. Noah interrupts excitedly, praising Shinoga's natural ability and claiming he gained a servant without needing any training. Shinoga desperately asks her to stop, but Karura, unaware of the tension, politely introduces herself as both the head of the Karura clan and Shinoga's new subordinate. Shinoga cringes at the terrible timing as Jahrnacht, clearly confused, demands clarification. Uncomfortable, he questions why Karura is kneeling. Karura explains she is following Noah's instructions on how to properly present herself, admitting she lacks experience. She hopes this display proves her loyalty. Jahrnacht, however, is unimpressed and calls it disrespectful. She orders Karura to stand, stating that such behavior is inappropriate for someone in her position. When Karura asks to change back into her usual clothes, Noah interrupts again, accusing her of being dull and questioning her loyalty. Annoyed, Jahrnacht punches Noah, sending her flying 5 kilometers away through a window. Turning back to Shinoga, Jahrnacht directly asks if he has any romantic interest in Karura. He quickly reassures her, admitting that while Karura is attractive and he respects her, she holds no special place in his heart. He clearly states that Jahrnacht is the only one important to him. Satisfied, Jahrnacht softens and accepts his answer. She takes responsibility for telling him to adjust to Karura's presence and allows Karura to stay for now. However, she firmly warns him that any deeper connection must remain with her alone. As Shinoga hesitates under the pressure of her rules, Noah suddenly storms back into the room, furious about being thrown away and ready to fight. However, she immediately stops when she notices the calm, romantic atmosphere. Disgusted, Noah mocks the scene and complains about their behavior while she was suffering, threatening to throw up. Late at night, Shinoga finds himself in the rooftop bath at the estate, feeling awkward about being allowed to wash first. While he worries about being an annoyance to the others, Jahrnacht suddenly enters the area. Despite her annoyance, she examines his injuries. Shinoga explains that he always heals at an incredible speed, once recovering from a broken bone in just a week. Jahrnacht suggests this abnormal resilience and his ability to see supernatural beings are likely linked to his mysterious right hand. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Brigitte. Looking exhausted and travel-worn, Brigitte expresses her absolute outrage. She rants about the hardships she endured crossing mountains and seas to deliver an end to the traitors, only to find them flirting. Her frustration boils over as Brigitte describes her suffering as a selfless act of goodness. Jahrnacht is completely unimpressed. She coldly calls Brigitte an idiot and tells her to leave, saying her travel problems are her own fault. Angered by the insult, she fires a powerful blast that pushes everyone back. She then starts a long, arrogant speech about how education is necessary for fools, claiming she is the only one capable of teaching them properly. As Brigitte continues ranting, Jahrnacht realizes there is no point trying to reason with her. Before the estate gets destroyed, Shinoga steps between them and begs them to stop fighting. However, Brigitte ignores him and turns her anger toward him instead, demanding to know who he is.